here. Welcome to my channel, Sewing an Imperfect Life. I'm coming to you from the Blue Mountains of New South Wales, Australia. I'm here in my sewing room where I like to share with you my ideas and my makes. Mostly I like making garments for myself, sometimes other things. Today I've got some new fabric to share with you and some patchwork and quilting. I have been doing a lot of sewing over the last 3 weeks. Unfortunately, almost none for myself. It has been a large project to sew up a special quilt for one of my nephews who's turning 25 and have that quilt ready for his birthday. So one of my sisters and my mum and myself, we've been doing it as a little joint project. We got parts of the top of the quilt ready and met together a bit over a week ago to try and join them all together and then baste the quilt together. And the goal was to have the basting done, so put the sandwich together and then start the quilting. It ended up being a little bit more difficult than we first thought to put together two different people's interpretation of the pattern and the instructions and making it seamless. So wasn't quite seamless with how the top came together, and there was a lot of adjusting on the day that we met together, and we got the backing basted to our middle layer, which ended up being just quite a thin layer of bamboo wadding, but most of the year that's all you need here in Australia, something light. In the winter it's just an addition to your doona, and in the summer sometimes no sheets or just a sheet, and it's nice to have just that light quilt to pull up over you. So before we even began, I did check with my nephew to see if he was interested in something homemade and handmade, and he was absolutely delighted at the thought and thinks it's very, very special. So we had a chat about colors, and I sent him a little picture of the jelly roll I was looking at so he could see the palette for that, and he loved it, and off we went. So I had never done a large project like this all the way through to the end on my own before. In the past, I've done quite a bit of patchworking. So patchworking where you just put together bits and pieces, and mostly for a quilt that's called the top. I'd only completed one totally before and given it to my sister. One of my sisters lives in the UK, so I thought it would be nice and cozy for her. I made it out of flannels, and I made it in squares of teacups and tea kettles, just for something a bit quirky and different. I'll put in a couple of the photos of the finished product for you. Because that was a bit special and I'd taken a lot of time to do the patchworking, I was unsure how to do the quilting, especially on the machine that I had. So I got that professionally done by someone who had a long arm quilt, and I really loved the result. And then you get it back and you have to do the binding yourself. So I'd gotten that done, and I'd never quilted a whole quilt together on my own before. It seemed quite daunting just because of the sheer size. I was not wrong to have my doubts about it. So when we put the top together for my nephew's quilt, because we'd done it a little bit differently, it didn't line up in beautiful lines, which made it tricky to then stitch in the ditch easily, because there wasn't a definite line all the way through. So the whole theme of the quilt was lines, mainly blue and white lines. So I took an idea from a video tutorial because I thought it was really simple and effective and I could possibly do it in the time I had left. So we used jelly rolls, which are little pre-cut strips, and I'd never used them before in patchworking, and I loved it. It was so easy. It really cut down on the time span because I didn't have to cut everything out individually, and that was wonderful, and I will be using jelly rolls again. I'll put in a picture and the link of the jelly roll that I used, chosen by my nephew, and there are lots and lots of different color palettes and also lots and lots of different patterns for quilts using jelly rolls. We will be doing another one later this year for another nephew, but it won't be the same pattern. So we put it all together eventually, and I was left with then putting the border around the whole thing, trimming it off, putting the border on, and then somehow figuring out how to get this huge king size quilt. Yes, it's big. The top basted on the bottom 2 layers. So what I ended up doing was I took it to work with pins and basting spray. Tell you what, I would never do it without that basting spray. It held everything in place really, really well. I was very impressed with it, and it doesn't make your fabric go crunchy. It just holds it in place really, really nicely, enough for you to get on with the business of your quilting. So I took the 3 layers to work. I'm a school teacher, and I put it down the classroom floor first thing in the morning before it had yucky bits and pieces all over it. And a beautiful colleague and a very early to school student helped me then roll it out, spray, roll it out, smooth it out bit by bit, and then put all the specially shaped patchwork pins in. They are also a game changer. That very, very helpful to keep everything in place nice and easily. So because things weren't perfectly in line, I decided to have a go at free motion quilting because the machine that I got at the end of last year has that option. I watched a few videos. I had a few goes on a piece of scrap fabric and I went for it. I definitely improved as I progressed through the quilt. There are a couple of spots that are very questionable. I did unpick quite a bit, but in the end, I just had to get it done, so I kept going. The quilt is finished. Just this morning, my nephew dropped by and it was handed over, and he looked very pleased. He didn't unroll the whole thing because it was quite large and he was on his way somewhere else. But he was very pleased that he got something handmade. This is how it turned out. When we put it together with the border and the binding, that just finished it off so nicely. The binding was also a blue and white stripe theme, deep blue, and the backing was a white and a light blue stripe. So there was kind of a theme and it all came together. The binding really pulled it together. I was up late last night doing that to get it absolutely finished. To finish it off and to put a little bit of homemade humour and elegance in there, I finished it off in the corner with this little label. Another nephew came and stayed for the weekend, and he was a wonderful help in getting the quilt on the lines, on my washing line, so I could find somewhere big enough and high enough to take some photos to share with you. So that was wonderful. And while we were on that little mission, I pulled out some other quilt tops that are unfinished and have been sitting unfinished for many years because I wasn't sure how to do it myself. Well, now I have no excuse. So I'm going to share with you a few of the quilt tops that I've made in the past. Most of them incorporate kind of like pictures because I find that a bit quirky and fun. I think in the future I'll do more of just one repeated pattern because I also find that quite satisfying to look at. But these are a little bit quirky, and I think maybe by the end of the year I'll have at least one more finished, if not two, because now I've got the know-how and I've got the machine that can pull it off. This first one here has a baking theme. I'm not sure how well you could see that, so I did take some pictures and I'll put them in for you. I think the canister squares, I sized that out and came up with that myself, and then with the labels here, that was some applique and then some hand stitching to get the labels on the canisters. The block with the bowls and the spoons, I'm pretty sure that is a Holt design. And if I go and have a look, I think I might even have the book that it's in. I do in fact have 3 Holt pattern books. Which one is this? This is the 2 mixing bowls with the mixing spoon on top. It's from this book called Farm Girl Vintage, and the block is called Baking Day Block, and it comes in 2 different size blocks. You can have it for a 6-inch finished block and also a 12-inch finished block. I think I did the 12-inch. Also from this Farm Girl Vintage is the kettle that I put on my sister's quilt, and this one called Quilty Fun is where I got the mug pattern, and there are a few other block patterns from Quilty Fun that you'll see in another quilt that I've got. The third Holt book I have is called Granny Squared. I've really liked that, but I've not yet made anything from that one, but I'm sure I will in the future. The fabrics on this were mostly scraps that I had collected over time, and I had left over from things, and I went, oh, they all go together. This one is like a velour that was an IKEA cushion cover. And I thought, oh, I like that it's a different texture, but the tones go together. And sometimes you have so many patterned fabrics that you need something plain in between. So that's why I pulled that out and added it as a really lovely burnt orange plain in there. So that's a bit of fun. I put these away for a while, and I thought that perhaps I didn't really like them anymore. And then when I pulled them out and took the photos today, I was absolutely delighted with them. And I thought, yeah, I'm really going to finish those. They're really fun, and they'll be lovely to use or just have hanging around my house over the back of a lounge or a chair or something. Okay, the next one is a little bit odd looking. I don't love it, but I think it'll be really useful, and I do like it. This was definitely made from all scraps, and I just put blocks together of even sizes as I went. It was a bit of an experiment of a couple of quilt blocks and using flannel, but it's wonderfully soft. I love it. It will be delicious to finish off and actually use. The colors don't all go together. I love the backing that I have in between. It's like brown and cream. Well, that's interesting, isn't it? Because this year I've made a few outfits that are brown and cream. I guess that's not a new color combo that I've enjoyed putting together. Anyway, some of the blocks themselves are all lovely, but put together, they're okay. I think I'll still get great use out of that quilt, and it will be super duper cozy when I finish it off and use it because of the really soft flannel fabric. But here's the photos of the whole thing on the line this morning. My last quilt, I've had this quilt top for patchworked up, ready to finish off for about 10 years. It was when I first bought my little cottage, and I wanted to have something lovely and joyful in my cottage with me. I remember gasping over the home loan, and then going ahead and doing 2 extra things for myself anyway. One of them was buying myself a really lovely mixmaster to go in my kitchen so I could bake with ease and with joy. And the other one was making, I called this my quilt of joy, because of the colors, but also because I was taking time to make something for myself. It is also a quilt of experiments. It's the one I probably started first, and I experimented with a whole lot of different techniques and things, and then so it's kind of a bit like a sampler quilt, I guess, but all the color palette goes together. I think I haven't quite finished the border. I got a bit overwhelmed because it ended up being really, really big. I do, however, love this part. This is the edging. Gosh, the patience I must have had to put that together, to do the scallop border, but it's just beautiful. I also love red with white. You'll see some of the blocks from the Laurie Holt books. There's a pear block, an apple block. I'll just put the pictures in and you can check it out. The actual patchwork fabric is from all over the place, and I just kept picking bits to match the color palette that I had. There was a bit of a fruity theme, I think, in the beginning, because I had some cherry fabrics and some strawberry fabrics that went together, and then I just kept pulling other little bits and pieces that I thought would match. But here is my quilt top of joy, which has been patchworked together, but perhaps in the near future it will also be quilted into an actual quilt. Yesterday, when I was madly trying to finish off that quilt and pull it all together, I was in and out of the house, sometimes sewing and sometimes trying to get the next bit of the lawn mowed. I say the next bit because I've got a little electric mower that has a battery, and the lawn was really high because we've had so much rain, heat. So the lawn was really high, and the mower can't keep going to mow the whole thing when it's that tall. As well as that, in the midst of mowing, this happened. That was quite dramatic, and that meant putting the mower away. I've had another go this morning because it's a bit drier and a bit sunnier, but it has already rained again today. yeah, so lots of the heat, the humidity, rain, and then drying up again. And as I say that, the sun has come out glaringly bright. That is what the weather has been like. Comes out from behind the clouds, beautiful and bright. Then the clouds literally roll in within a few minutes. So dark, it's wonderfully dramatic. In the midst of all of that, the nephew who came to stay with me, he and I did get out and about a little bit. We did a drop off of some items at a local charity shop, the Salvos, we call it here in Australia, and we also went in and had a look around. He had a couple of really lovely finds, and I was really pleased. I picked up 2 fabrics that I'm really happy about. This is a very fun fabric. This is a children's sleeping bag, but have a look. It's this wonderful, vibrant Sesame Street fabric, which I thought could become a really terrific jacket, quilted jacket. Oh, turn it this way perhaps. So I've given that a wash. I've got a lot of unpicking in my future with that. And I also picked up this piece, which was rolled up. I wasn't sure whether it was a sheet, a vintage sheet, but it turns out it is vintage fabric. It's got 2 self edges. It's only about, I think it's less than 1 meter across, which is a bit of a pain with vintage fabric, but I reckon there's about 8 meters of this, and it feels quite crisp. So mostly cotton, maybe a little bit of polyester, and that's probably the same with the fabric on the top of the sleeping bag. I think that will be really lovely in a dress, in a new pattern that I've bought but haven't tried out yet. So if it works out, it'll be really pretty, but if it doesn't, it won't be heartbreaking for me. And that's going to be the Imby dress by Karmme Apparel. So I've had some really lovely wins. I've finished a very big project. I've got some other projects in the works, but I'll get to them when I can. Currently, I'm absolutely exhausted. I've had people stay. I've done huge amounts of sewing. I got up early this morning. I baked not 1 but 2 gluten-free caramel cakes because that was the request for birthday lunch. They were both an absolute flop, so that was really disappointing, but that happens sometimes when you make just normal flour recipes into the gluten-free version. Sometimes it doesn't work. What can you do? I tell you what I did. He doesn't get a birthday cake to cut up to share with everyone, but I did cut off all the edges that worked and were quite delicious, and I put them in a little paper box for him. It still said happy birthday, here's some caramel cake. So I'm sure they'll get eaten with a cup of tea once he gets home from all his festivities. This week is a busy one for me. I am pattern testing a dress for Charlie Darwin Textiles, so I'm quite happy to do that. That's quite fun, but I really need to get onto that. And I've got a really busy week at work. I've got interviews with parents, which I really enjoy. I think they're extremely worthwhile. But I prepare quite a lot for each one of those. I've got a page of notes that I prepare for each one. Because I like to be really explicit with what's happening with my students. So that's a lot of preparation, and then the interviews actually take place before my teaching hours and after my teaching hours as well. So while I'm happy to do it, and I think it's really worthwhile, it can be quite exhausting because I'm doing all my normal workload as well as that. and then somehow fitting in the pattern testing to be finished by the end of the week. I hope you're finding things that bring you joy. I hope you're safe. I hope you're well. I hope you're enjoying whatever you're creating or having fun dreaming about the things that you would like to create. If you like my content, it would be terrific if you could give me a like, subscribe if you wish to be notified when I do put out videos. I try to get them out once a week, sometimes more, sometimes less, depends how I'm going with other things in life. Thanks for your support, and it's great to have you here. Bye for now, everyone.